Hello, everyone. Welcome to Across the Bifrost, the Mighty Thor podcast, where on each and every episode we explore the world of Marvel's Mighty Thor. I am your host for today, Ryan. I am flying solo today because I am actually out of town right now. I've been out of town a lot lately, and I picked up an issue that I really wanted to talk about, but I don't have my normal setup with me. So no music today, no Faz, no Will, just me here telling you about an issue of Captain America that I actually picked up because there is a Thor-centric story going on in Cap that I really feel like we should cover on the podcast if we can, because after reading Captain America 14 by J. Michael Straczynski, Carlos Magno, who did some guest art on Immortal Thor, Espen Grutengern and Joe Caramagna, also with a sick variant cover from our buddy Martin Coccolo. After reading this issue, what I realized was it's actually a Thor comic. Now, let me explain. J. Michael Straczynski had a great run on Thor at least a decade or so ago. And he also had a great run on Spider-Man, and now he's doing Captain America. So it feels like he's bringing all of those characters together for this big team-up story. And for those of you that may have seen some stuff that I share online when it comes to comics, you know I really, really enjoy Marvel team-up, Marvel 2-in-1, even over at DC. Like, I love old Brave and the Bold, World's Finest. Any scenario where two superheroes or more get together to fight a villain of the week, I am totally here for it. I still feel like Marvel could do a team-up book every month, and it would be so much fun. Honestly, maybe use it as a way to try out artists, try out writers. I think that could be a cool idea. I'm just saying, that's just my personal opinion, sitting here talking about comics by myself today. When I read Captain America 14 and the start of this new little storyline that Cap's going to be doing with Thor and with Spider-Man, I thought to myself, there's no way we can't talk about this because it is truly a Thor story. So Cap is not a book that I have been picking up in this current run, but I do understand that Cap just came out of a pretty intense story with a group called the Front Door Cabaret. So now he is reeling from that, questioning some friendships. J. Michael Straczynski has gone back and taken another look, another angle at Steve Rogers' origin story in the first 13 issues of this book. So a lot has been going on for Steve. Steve has, he's one of those heroes where he never really gets a day off. And when he gets a day off, as he says in issue 14, he probably just is going to sit and watch Netflix and maybe read a book, something like that. This book really hits on the theme of friendship and camaraderie and community, and I really, really, really appreciate the big swing that I feel like Mr. Straczynski is going to take in this story. Issue 14 of this Captain America run is entitled "To Be or Not to Be in Broxton." So if you're a longtime Thor fan, you know that Broxton, Oklahoma is a big focal point of a few different people's runs, namely Mr. Straczynski, and he brought all of the Asgardians back from the dead in this floating Asgard outside of Broxton, Oklahoma. One thing that I find incredibly ironic about me doing this review by myself, and I'm reviewing a book that highlights Broxton, Oklahoma, is I am actually in Oklahoma right now as I am giving you these thoughts, this review. I really, really wish Broxton wasn't so out of the way because I would love to be talking about a Broxton, Oklahoma comic in Broxton. That would be awesome. But alas, we don't always get what we want, right? Oh man, the coffee is especially good this morning. always good to have a good cup of coffee with a good comic. And usually I would be talking with my buddy Faz, with Will Rose, who's doing some awesome things at North Carolina Comic-Con this weekend. So if you think about it, maybe reach out to Will and ask how his experience at NC Comic-Con was. We were fortunate enough to go last year and talk to just a fantastic comic book writer, fantastic person, Alyssa Wong. We were able to talk with them about their Captain Marvel book that was just launching at the time. So if you think about it, maybe reach out to Will, ask him how NC Comic-Con went this year. He got to do a panel with some fantastic comic book creators there. Some of them that you might not know, but I mean, they've been working at this comic book game for a while now. So reach out to Will, ask how his experience was, and I will jump into this Captain America book. The little blurb at the beginning gives more of the immediate context. I'm a fan of when books do this. They give you enough information to jump into the issue, even if you're not following the book. So I was really perfectly set up to understand this story without having read 13 issues of Cap beforehand. I won't lie, this run of Captain America has not personally caught my imagination, but I'm a Cap fan, and I know there are many big Cap fans out there. Our buddy Will Spotted Bear is a huge Cap fan. Hopefully we can get him on one of these episodes to review this current storyline that Thor is going to be a part of. And there's some great people out there that do a podcast called the Captain America Comic Book Fans Podcast. Rick Verbinas is doing that, and we had him on the show a long time ago. But if you want to check out more Cap stuff, it's definitely out there. In fact, the Captain America Comic Book Fans Podcast was one of the podcasts that inspired me to start this Thor podcast forever ago, because I had heard our buddy Mark D. White, professor in philosophy and thought. He has been on the show before. He wrote a book on Thor and philosophy, but he also wrote a book called The Virtues of Captain America. So when he was on that show, I kind of got really connected with how he was talking about Cap, and I was like, oh my gosh, like there should be a place for Thor fans like this. So voila, 3 years later, we have Across the Bifrost still going. So I love Cap. Cap is, I was just talking to my son about this. He wanted to know who my 3 favorite Marvel superheroes were. And I said, well, Thor is obvious. And then I said, actually, Captain America is probably my second favorite. And then, of course, I had to throw my guy, Ben Grimm, the Thing, in there at number 3. Those are the 3 that I feel the most confident in telling people. And I like a lot of superheroes. I really do. Like Hercules, the Black Knight, Doctor Strange, so many different ones. I feel like the running joke is that I don't like Iron Man, and I've definitely fed into that joke. And the odd Iron Man story from time to time can't hurt. It's not that bad. But Cap is definitely one of my favorites. And so to see him and Thor get to do a team up in this book was a lot of fun. So the story starts out actually with Thor arriving in Broxton and trying to figure out kind of what has happened to Broxton, not since Straczynski's run on Thor, but since Donny Cates' run on Thor. So a little bit of context here. If you're a longtime Thor reader, you know Broxton was a huge part of Straczynski's run on Thor, and not that big of a part of Donny Cates's, unless you're talking about the God of Hammers story. The God of Hammers story, in my opinion, was Donny Cates's crowning, like, final story. We wish that he could have gotten to do more, but, you know, his just circumstances came into play, and Donny couldn't finish the Thor story the way he wanted, which we totally understand. But I think God of Hammers was the story that really felt like Donnie's last big story in the Thor run, and that's centered around Broxton. The God of Hammers destroys Broxton, and Thor is left to pick up the pieces. So now, I believe this is Thor's first time going back to Broxton since Donny Cates' run all the way back in 2022. So, all that being said, Thor arrives back in Broxton. He starts talking with one of the shop owners and offers him coffee, which is fantastic, to reaffirm that Thor is a coffee drinker. I like to think that Thor is a black coffee drinker because that's the kind of coffee drinker I am. And to have the favorite drink of your favorite comic book hero, that just, would be icing on top of the cake. Speaking of coffee. Oh, still good. There is this weird bit of distortion on the footage from the attack from the God of Hammers. And it almost looks like when if you're a parent or if you just remember this from childhood, blowing bubbles, and there's that pinkish, green, yellow kind of film on top of the bubble liquid. That's kind of what the screens of these TVs look like as they're showing footage from the God of Hammers attack on Broxton. And Thor thinks to himself, well, that's really weird. That's not normal. So he needs to get to the bottom of this. We jump to Peter Parker in one of the parks of New York City, and he is having this really interesting, he and Steve have this really interesting back and forth with themselves in this issue where they want to go to dinner with another superhero friend. They want to go hang out with somebody who actually gets and understands them, but they're a little nervous to do that. Peter is really nervous to just ask Steve if he wants to go to dinner and just talk and hang out, just as friends, not as superheroes. We jump to Steve, who is, we jumped back to Thor real quick, and a return of one of our favorite characters from the Jason Aaron run. Roz Solomon shows back up. And she's not a part of S.H.I.E.L.D. anymore, but she reaffirms to Thor, hey, I still have my connections. I may not be a S.H.I.E.L.D. person anymore, but I still have my connections. And even Roz, she can't really figure this out, but she knows that they need to get to the bottom of this. She says, nothing happened that we know about. Question is, what was it? What did it do? And most important of all, why did it do what it did? And who decided it had to be done? So Roz doesn't have really a lot of answers, but she's helping Thor ask the right questions. And Thor knows, going back to that theme of friendship and camaraderie and community, he knows he's going to need a little more firepower to help him get to the bottom of this. So then we jump over to Steve in Steve's apartment, and he's talking, kind of recapping about the past few adventures he's been on with the Front Door Cabaret, and a neighbor of his stops by, Mrs. Rosen, and she and Steve have this really good conversation about why, what he does in his spare time, why he can't just go out with friends. And my favorite part of this issue when it comes to just story building is Steve explaining to Mrs. Rosen what goes through his mind when a, quote, civilian says, well, why don't you just go out to dinner with one of your superhero friends? I love how Steve breaks this down for her, and I'd love to just read a little excerpt for you. Steve is running through the hypothetical situations of why it's really difficult for superheroes to just go to dinner. He says, maybe you know somebody's secret identity and they're okay with that, but they also know that if you go out to dinner together, someone who knows who you are might see you and figure out who they are. Or you know who they are, but they don't know that you know who they are. So if you ask them to dinner in a way that suggests they may have to try to kill you to keep their secret or something, or who knows who is who on the other side. Do you meet in uniform? Maybe in masks? Each of you wants to build the trust with the other, but nobody wants to make the first move, and it's a really long night, or their identity, they know your identity, but there's always this risk that the other person is being mind controlled by an enemy who wants you in a public place so that they can attack you or expose your identity to the world. And then the next panel is just his neighbor staring at him blankly. Steve has definitely thought through this in 80 years of fighting crime and having enemies all over the world, especially people that would want to see Captain America, of all people, fall or be defeated. She just re-emphasizes to him, like, hey, I'm just saying, like, if you have somebody you can talk to, you should talk to them. And wouldn't you know, Peter Parker got up the courage to make that phone call, and Steve answers the phone. They talk for a little bit, but most of it is them saying, hey, we should have dinner tonight. They kind of both get over their hesitancy about just hanging out with a friend that might understand what they're going through. And if there's two guys who definitely know what it's like to go through the struggles of real life and a superhero life, Spider-Man and Captain America feel like two guys that could definitely see eye to eye on some things. Steve is about ready to leave his apartment to go over to Peter's, and wouldn't you know, Thor just shows up and he says he would have words with Steve Rogers. I do love how Thor is maybe the worst house guest, because he doesn't really care what's going on in your mortal life. He just says, I have need of thee. I need you to drop what you're doing, and I need you to pay attention to what I'm going to say. Steve calls Peter back and says, hey man, I'm going to have to do a rain check, but could you come over in your work attire? That would be awesome. So they all get together at Thor's place, and there's a little bit of this back and forth between Peter and Steve on whether Thor knows that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. And I'll be honest, that was... I don't know if that's Straczynski trying to tell his friends and behind masks story, or whether that's actually true. Does Thor actually not know who Spider-Man is at this point in Marvel continuity? I mean, both characters have been around for so long. Is it possible that Peter Parker is still a mystery to Thor? I mean, even with the all power, with the Thor force, Odin force, is it really possible that Thor could not know who Peter Parker is? They do say, 47 minutes later, Thor is recapping what he's seen in Broxton, giving a little bit more of the context of how Broxton came to Asgard's aid, and Thor and Steve start to put together some pieces, but they can't really connect everything. And then Spider-Man has this revelation of what the distortion on the screen could be. He describes it as a restore point, where I'll tell you what Spidey says it is. A restore point is when you take an image or a snapshot of a computer's operating system at a particular moment when you know everything is working exactly as it should be and the way that it was supposed to be. So Thor and the guys are trying to set out to figure out what this restore point is, and maybe if they can get back to it. The end of the book features a handshake between Thor and Spidey and Steve. They all agree that they're going to go on this journey. They're going to go figure out the origin of this distortion and get back to this restore point. And maybe, just maybe, that could be the key to bringing Broxton back and bringing them back to more life and vitality. I do like that Thor does, in my opinion, view this as a way to pay them back for everything they did, the people of Broxton did for the people of Asgard. That feels like a very kingly move. That feels like a very forward-thinking Thor, being a god of his word, to take care of the people of Broxton, to take care of Asgard in relation to Broxton. And I do like that the God of Hammers situation is being brought back up, And we're having to deal with the fallout of that situation. I love that Mr. Straczynski is putting that much interconnected thought into that. The book ends with either a flashback or a flash forward. It's this fight scene between these ghostly figures. We don't really see their faces. We don't know who these people are, or these ghosts. But we do know a few things. We know that they have swords. We can pick out little bits of armor that is, Viking-esque. One of the figures does look like Fandral. I won't lie. There's a character who gets stabbed through the chest with a ghostly sword. And that is, I'm not saying it's Fandral, but I think it looks like Fandral. And I hope it's not Fandral, because seeing Fandral die would kind of suck. We haven't seen a lot of him in the Immortal Thor run that's going on right now, but it would be cool to revisit the Warriors 3. But there are a bunch of these ghostly figures that are moving around this dark, cavernous picture. They're kind of cast in this washed out light. And then the last page, we see a woman, potentially a Valkyrie, yelling to this army of Viking warriors before the large citadel of what looks like a bizarro Asgard. And she yells, "Fight as you will, dark Asgard shall fall, and the lost shall live again." And that's how we end Captain America 14. The little preview for the issue 15 has a great cover of Cap, Spidey, and Thor crashing through the Welcome to Asgard sign. So that's fun. And the little synopsis says, when Captain America, Spidey, and Thor find themselves drawn to Broxton, Oklahoma, the trio will have to work together to uncover the secrets lurking in the town that was ruined and the site of Thor's greatest shame. But what they find may prove too horrifying for even the greatest of heroes to overcome. So I think this was a great opening chapter. We didn't see a lot of action from our three heroes, but I have a feeling in issues 15 and 16, we will see much more action from this trio of heroes. And I really, with this group, I don't think there's really much they can't solve. So I'm looking forward to issue 15, and I think everyone should go pick up this Cap book, even if it's only for these 3 issues, just to stay up to date on what Thor is doing in other books. And because we just recently lost Thor in the Avengers book, Thor really was kind of sidelined in the Blood Hunt event. And I feel like when Thor shows up in other books, it would just be good for us to stay in tune with what is going on in those books. So be sure to check out Captain America 14. And for my buddy Will Rose, I will say this is legacy number 764 of Captain America. So everybody, thank you so much for checking this out. We are going to have some brand new issues to talk about in the next few weeks. Immortal Thor is going to be coming out with more issues. And we actually have an issue of Venom that has Loki on the cover. And a few people in the Discord chat have said, like, oh, that's kind of interesting. I wonder why Venom is showing up, why Loki is showing up in a Venom book. And there's a lot of other comics coming out that we've been really excited about, like Absolute Superman #1. It was a really, really fun read, and we're hoping to get a special guest for a review of that first issue. And Faz and I have been talking nonstop about different ways that we can incorporate all the different books we love and enjoy. So if you have any ideas about, maybe some of the stuff beyond Thor that we talk about, shoot us an email. shoot us a message on Instagram. You can also check out our Discord in the information below. You can support us on Patreon. Click the link down there, and we will get you episodes as soon as we have them. You would have gotten the Jason Aaron interview an entire week early. If that is something that interests you, please check that out. We have a few different levels over there. And everybody, this is me flying solo today. I hope you enjoyed this review of Captain America 14, and I can't wait to talk to you next time about Thor comics and what is maybe beyond Thor comics, other stuff that we are just loving all across the realms of this comic book crazy world. So until next time, I hope that no matter what you're doing, no matter who you're with, you remember to stay worthy.